It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Judy Brott, Goldstein Tibor. We here in your beautiful apartment in Yerushalayim in Achlaot. And Judy, your family is originally from Hungary.
From Budapest, yes. Budapest, Hungary. I was born in 1944 in September. Actually, my birthday is Yud Aleph Tishrei, which is the day after Yom Kippur. So it's a wonderful birthday to come into the world with. I appreciate it so much. When I found out that was my Hebrew birthday, because for a long time I didn't know that it was my Hebrew birthday, I called my mother and thanked her. And actually I called her also once because I wanted to have my horoscope done, and I needed to know what time of the day I was born. So I called my mother, and she said she didn't remember because the bombs were falling, so she wasn't really looking at the clock. And she said that I was born in a hospital in Budapest, and she said that the doctor who was helping her was a high-ranking SS soldier or whatever. He was in a uniform, and she said that she was almost terrified of what he might do, and she said that at some point, well, she said she was begging him, not to hurt the baby, not to hurt her, and I mean, he was, I guess, a feeling person, because when the room cleared of everyone else, it was only my mother and this doctor. He came closer to her, and he says, "Don't worry, I'm a doctor first."
Did he know that your mother was Jewish?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is how I was born. And I tell you what, after realizing this, the significance
it's
of
a
it
miracle.
all,
It's like a miracle.
It is. Every moment of every person's life is a miracle. But I actually happen to really appreciate that the miracles that have happened in my life are significant. I'm sure that everybody's life is just as significant, but to me, I really feel even extra strong that I owe my life to Hashem, and of course everybody does, but that I'm kind of even stronger commanded to do something with my life. I feel like every moment has to be something that's full of purpose, full of meaning, full of doing something good in the world. So, Baruch Hashem, not jumping, around too much, but Baruch Hashem, we have the bracha of living in Yerushalayim, in Nachlaot, and Hashem has been really so kind, full of rachamim, to lead us to the moments that we're experiencing now, to continue to do good things with so many people. There's a yeshiva at our house, and my husband, who passed away about 3.5 years ago, he was also a child of survivors from Poland, and actually once my mother realized that that I was also a survivor. She just thought I was her baby, you know, and once one of my sons was visiting her, and he said something to her that he's a child of survivors, and my mother said, what? And she didn't realize, you know, like I'm in that category also, but really, Bekitzer, every moment I wanted to be significant. And I really learned that from my parents, because it wasn't, of course, only my parents. My mother, by the way, was born in Újhely, Sátoralja, Újhely, and my father was born in Konyár, which is like a little village near Debrecen. And what can I tell you? They were both from religious homes, but after the war, things got kind of trickled out, and we were always celebrating all the holidays, but we definitely were not what I would say observant in. Let's say we were traditional.
Can you speak a little bit about your grandparents or your
grandparents? I tell you what, on my mother's side, my grandfather passed away at a very young age, and my grandmother became a widow with 5 children. They were living in Sátoralja, Újhely, but they thought that the children, they had 5 children, and that the children would have more opportunities for a better life being in Budapest, and so they moved to Budapest. And Nebach, my grandfather, I think got tuberculosis or something, and he passed away at, I think, at age 39 or something like that. But my grandmother, Baruch Hashem, this is a photograph of my parents' wedding. This is my grandmother, and she was a really wise woman. She wasn't educated formally, but she was really a wise person. And
can I ask, when were your parents married? Do you know the date of their marriage?
Where did they get?
When? What year?
When? Yeah, January 25th, 1943.
And this is in the shul in the Jewish quarter of in Budapest.
Yeah, in Budapest.
Do you know the name of the shul?
I don't know which shul actually.
But it was in the Jewish quarter.
Yeah, I don't know which shul. You know what? The truth is that it wasn't. Not that it wasn't allowed, but we were not talking about history so much in my family. It was such a sensitive issue. It was such a sensitive topic. I know that whatever I know came to me indirectly. My parents never spoke to my sister. I had a sister, actually, whose yard site was there before yesterday. She was born in 1948, and my parents never said anything to my sister and I directly about anything. But the reason I even know about these things is because first of all, whenever they got together with some friends, if they started to talk about what a beautiful blue glass this is, they always ended up with the war. They always was, oh yeah, this happened in this tabor or that tabor, or and the songs that they were singing, and they were talking among themselves, and that's why I know about the war. And then actually, they started to open up about talking. I think when Steven Spielberg interviewed them, I think that they felt like, okay, now they could talk. And also, something interesting happened. My sister has three children, and the oldest is a writer, an author, and she wrote a book called The Invisible Bridge. Her name is Julie Oringer. I don't know if you ever read the book. It's worth reading. It used to be on New York Times bestseller for years. Anyway, she wrote a book based on my father's story, and so my mother was kind of not the co-author, but she provided a lot of information, and because things happened, and I guess the wounds weren't as fresh. I heard more stories, and actually one of my uncles, whose book this is, his name is Alfred Tibor. He was the only other survivor in my father's family. 80 some odd people from their immediate family were murdered. He became a sculptor. He's not alive anymore either. He died a few years ago at the age of 97. But his work is all over big cities, actually. Anyway, I'm just kind of skipping around.
So Judy, can I ask, you mentioned that your family changed their name to Tibor.
Yes. So
can you explain why they did that?
Yeah, so I was going to say that because this uncle of mine, my father's brother, younger brother, who was the only living relative of my father's immediate family, they had an older brother whose name was Tibor. He was I'm not sure if he really finished or didn't finish his training to be a doctor, but at some point during the war, he was a doctor in some kind of camp, and where it was, I think they had a lot of, maybe it was a hospital, or I'm not sure exactly what it was, but that's where he was working. And one day the Nazis said that why should they have to care about all these, cared for all these sick people, and they just killed everybody, all the patients, all the doctors, everybody. So that was my uncle, and actually he happens to be in this photograph. He, aside from my grandmother and my two aunts, this and my mother's older sister, and this is my mother's younger sister, and of course cousins who were, Baruch Hashem, able to survive the war. Anyway, yes, so under communism, which is where we were liberated too from the Nazis. Once I asked my uncle, because he was in Siberia for 5 years, said, how is it so much better now that we're living under communists and not Nazis? And he was laughing, because the communists were killing everybody, millions of people also. And I guess they let people live. Some people live. We got to live until we escaped from Hungary in 1956, December 25th.
So I
which
just
is
want to
another
go
story.
I just want to go back a little bit.
Right.
So
And
how did your family survive in Budapest and that they weren't deported?
Okay, so as I mentioned, my father's family was killed, and my father was in slave labor camp for years. Actually, I met my father when I was 13 months old, because he was called in when my mother was, I think, 4 months pregnant. Anyway, the only people who were in Budapest of my family was my mother and her mother and two sisters. Her brothers were already, that's another story. One was in America already, and one was in Europe, but then he went to America also. Anyway, my mother and I were, and her mother were in different buildings with the Yellow Star in Budapest, and
those were the safe glass houses.
yeah, no, those were not. Those houses were marked that Jews lived there.
Okay.
They were marked with a yellow star, and but being adventurous, one day my mother heard. I was born already. My mother heard that there is such a thing as what we know of glass house. She said that she went with me, and there were so many people there in front of the house that she said, no way we'll be able to get in. And she was kind of at the edge of the tumult, and somebody came up to her and said, there are some other houses, not only this one, and directed my mother to such a house, and we were able to get into that house. It was under the auspices also of the Swedish government. And but my mother said that there was no difference between that house and another house that we were in, except a little shallot, the little sign that this house is under the protection of the Swiss government, I think Swedish government, because they were, I think, Swiss
there was Swiss from Karl Lutz.
Yeah.
And then Wallenberg.
Yeah.
But Karl Lutz was the first one to have the idea of the protection of glass houses.
So we were in one of those, but my mother said that it was still freezing and there were thousands of people in there. She said that if you didn't hold on to your shirt, it will be kind of scuffed off of you because there were so many people there. And there was no food, there was no water, and there were no windows, and they were so happy when it snowed because at least some people were able to go and collect snow to melt into some kind of drinking something, and she said that she used to, she had two diapers. One was on me, and the other one she washed, and she used to warm it, dry it on her back to so it would dry. And she said that this was already toward the end of the war, of the liberation. But she said that mamash, for about 2 weeks there was no food or water or anything, and she said that this place that we were in was specifically for mothers and children, and she said that the children, babies, were dying. And one morning she noticed that when I woke up I wasn't crying, and she was really scared, because that meant that I didn't have koach to
Strength.
to make a sound. And she said that she was advised that if she could possibly just squeeze out maybe a teaspoon of milk, then I will probably survive. So she did that, and she was determined to go to see, to find out. I don't know what happened that day, but she was determined to find out where her mother could be found. And on the way, I think that she had, I don't know, I don't want to get stories mixed up, but on the way, she saw these soldiers loading sacks of something onto a truck, and one of them motioned to her that she should come close, and lo and behold, he gave what was in the sacks were hazelnuts, and he gave her a handful of hazelnuts. I guess they must have been peeled, because she didn't say that she had to crack them. She said that she started eating them, and she literally felt her breast fill up with milk. And by the time she went to the apartment building, the landlord lady saw what was going on. She gave her a glass of water, and that saved our life. You know, I mentioned before my niece's book. So she starts out with a poem in one of the English editions, one of the, I guess, original English editions, with a poem by someone, I think from Poland, that it was because there was a forest. It was because there were no trees. It was because it was sunny. It was because it was pouring rain. It was because of anything. Nobody knew why this person was killed and another person wasn't. Or this person died and another person didn't. Nobody knew. But that's how we are always living our life. I have to say that I had an incident that I could have been there, but because a Torah that we really live by, from the Piatzetzner Rebbe, who said that the most important thing in this world is to do somebody else a favor. And because of that, or because of I don't know what, it seems like my life was saved. I didn't go to an appointment in the shuk because a friend of mine came over and asked for a cup of coffee. That's another story by itself. But anyway, if I would not have given that cup of coffee to my friend, I would have been there at the pigua.
There was a terrorist attack.
In pieces.
Sure,
Yeah.
that saved your life.
So, like it wasn't just during the war that these things happened. Every moment of our life is like that. We can't count on anything. What the only thing that we can expect is the unexpected.
Judy, did your mother find her mother? Did she win?
Yeah, we found my grandmother, and we've also found that my aunts were taken away, but miraculously they came back. They were part of this death march, and they came back, and yes, Baruch Hashem, my father came back. As I mentioned, when I was 13 months old, and his brother also came back. I really remember going to the train station every day to see if he was on one of the trains, and one day he was.
So you were very young, but this is one of your earliest.
I was like 2 years old. I don't know.
Is this one of your earliest memories that you have?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it must have been exceptionally emotional for your mother to meet her husband.
Yeah.
Your father.
He was like, I don't know, 20 something years old, you know. And yeah, he came back. And so our immediate family who made it through the war was my mother's mother, my mother's 2 sisters, my father and his brother. There were some cousins. Actually, this lady, my mother's cousin, she also was a wonderful person, and she made it. And I think maybe another couple of sisters of my grandmother. And so that was our immediate family. Excuse me. And we all lived in Hungary.
Did your parents,
in Budapest.
Did they manage to go back to the old apartment that they once lived in?
No, in fact, I don't know. I mean, maybe my grandmother went back to the old apartment. I don't know. They lived on a street called Nefelejts utca. Nefelejts is the flower forget-me-not, forget-me-not street. And for years my grandmother was living there, and then they were able to get an apartment. But no, we didn't go back to the same apartment. In fact, my mother said that the Goyim were sure that they could ransack Jewish homes, and my mother was the most capable and artistic dressmaker. And she said that one of those times when she went, she was out in the street, she saw a woman wearing the coat that she made. And she was afraid to tell this fact to the woman, but I think she did go up to her and she said, "You're wearing my coat." And of course the woman was shocked. I don't think that she gave the coat back. But these things happened. I tell you what, I was constantly aware and amazed that my parents and other people, it wasn't only my parents, were able to continue their life and were able to even smile. And I mean, I had pretty incredible parents. They knew how to make something out of nothing and make it to be beautiful. People used to think that we're so wealthy because we used to dress really elegant, but it was my mother who made the dresses, and my father, since he was a window trimmer, he used to also, but both my parents, they knew how to make everything beautiful, and somehow they really succeeded. My father, when because I had trouble with my heart, which is another story, when I was a child, my parents were told that it would be better for me to be in the mountains. So my father decided that he's going to build a little house, which he did. But in a communist country, you don't just go to the store and buy things. You just have to acquire through ways and means material. And he used to have a little motorcycle, and he used to take the building material on his back before going to work. Like if he would acquire a sack of cement, he would, like put it on his back, and he would take it up to the mountain, and he built a beautiful little house. But I don't think the house was bigger than this room, probably smaller. But we loved it, and we always had guests, and my father was able to always make a bed for whoever was there. I just remember that, and we, yeah. So
you have that wonderful. It's a type of becher. It's a
yeah.
And it's got an inscription. If you could read the inscription, it's in Polish. It's in Hungarian.
Yeah, it is in Hungarian. It says Kirakat verseny, kiállítás, and it was in 1947. 1947. It was in September 20th, and it was awarded to fiatal kirakat rendezetők, and this was awarded to my father. But I have to tell you that this also is one of those items that my father won, because both actually he and his brother were in the same profession, and their name was Goldstein, but their nickname was Zahav. They were known as the Zahav brothers, and
Zahav's gold as well. It's
right.
The
that's
Hebrew for gold.
why. Yeah, that's why they were called. So my father always used to introduce himself Goldstein Zahav Endre, and they were sometimes sent out by the government, by the communist government, to work in different countries when Hungary was displaying, their whatever wares. And in fact, during the revolution, my uncle happened to be in Moscow, and he couldn't come back. He had a hard time coming back because of the fighting. Also a story. He wrote this book of his memoirs. It's worth reading also. He was a character. He had erased from his life that something that he can't do. He succeeded. Whatever he set out to do, he did. Anyway, in the meantime, of course, he got married, and they had 2 children. Now they live in the States. The children are, of course, grandparents already, and my sister and I were in our family, and then came the revolution. And by the way, I just want to say that I have very good memories of being a child in Hungary, because my parents tried to provide everything that was possible for their children.
Did you stay in the Jewish quarter, or did you go to Jewish school?
I did not go to a Jewish school, but I remember, going to shul on holidays. My aunt, one of my mother's sister, she married a man who was practicing religiously, and actually his brother was the rabbi in one of the Orthodox shuls, and my cousin, actually, like everything has a story of the story of the story. My aunts, I'm not sure if they were already married or just fiancé, didn't come back from the war, and she married this man who lost his wife. One day, a shrapnel killed her, and she fell on her daughter, and her daughter lived, was like 3.5 years old. She now lives in Los Angeles, actually. I talked with her, actually just 2 days ago I spoke with her. Anyway, so she, they were the religious part of the family, a real big family actually, and they went to Talmud Torah. But I think that during the Talmud Torah was only like after school, and they were permitted in school, because we had school on Shabbos also in Hungary. They were permitted not to write, but they had to go to school. They were permitted not to write on Shabbos, but they had to show up in school on Shabbos.
And Judy, did you have Jewish and non-Jewish friends growing up, if you remember? Or
in Hungary,
it wasn't an issue?
I don't know if I had non-Jewish friends. I didn't go to a Jewish school. I went to a public school. But Jews and non-Jews, they were not playing together. In America, when I went to school, to regular school, yeah, I had some non-Jewish friends, I think. Although I remember, I'm skipping a little bit, but I remember when we arrived in Miami, and I went to school. We didn't speak English, but somehow there was a little girl in the class. I was in 6th grade, and she had a Magen David on, and somehow I indicated to her. I don't know why I get,
It's emotional.
I indicated to her that I told her that I have one of those at home, which wasn't true, but I wanted her to know that I was always also Jewish. Yeah.
Did you become
Hungary,
best friends? Did you become best friends? Did you become close friends?
She was in the same class. Yeah. She had a lot of stuffed animals on her bed, which I thought was like a dream for me. But in Hungary, I don't know. I think that we just really associated with Yidden. I'm sure that my parents had to deal with the non-Yidden, but I don't. You know what? I never even thought of this. Did your
parents or you, did you experience any anti-Semitism after the war in Hungary?
I tell you what. The only scene that I remember is that we lived in an apartment building in Budapest, and of course under communism, everybody was the same, and I was a very proud Utterer, and I happened to be always a really good student, and so I had privileges, because anyone who who did something for the communist state got privileges. So I remember I was awarded going to a 2-week sleepaway camp and things like that. But I don't remember anti-Semitism, but I was going to say that in the apartment building that we lived in, we had some neighbors. They were Jews, but they were like communist, shibboleth communist. And one of their daughters graduated from a school and didn't get good enough grades to go to some other school, that I guess high school, I don't know, whatever it was. And the parents of the girl came over to our apartment and told my father that he needs to change the grade, because they knew that he was an artist, and if he wouldn't have, they would have told on him, and that would have been the last time that probably we would have seen my father.
And
Things like
did
that.
he change the grade?
He changed it, yeah.
He had no option.
Yeah, he changed it from a really bad grade to an A. I don't know, some grades, whatever it was. And actually, during the revolution, my mother said that the reason she decided that we are going to escape was because during one of the raids, she went down to the basement, which was like the bomb shelter, and took some blankets. It was cold. It was like November, December already, and there was some guy over there also, and he said to her, the Jews are hiding like rats, and she said that finished her being in Hungary, because it was scary to escape. It was life-threatening, and so it wasn't an easy decision for people, for themselves and for their family, to decide that to escape. But she said that was like the last straw. She said, no matter what happens, we're not staying here.
And did you manage to come into America because you had family?
We went to America instead of, let's say, coming to Eretz Israel, which is where my father would have liked to go to. But we did go to the States because my mother really wanted to go to the States, and her sisters and mother also wanted to go to the States because my mother had 2 brothers and their families here in the States, one in Los Angeles, one in Miami. So when we got to America, 13 people out of our immediate family escaped, not at the same time, but within weeks of each other. But we all came on the same boat to America, and so part of the family went to Los Angeles, and part of the family went to Miami. My family, my mother, father, and my sister and I. My sister was, by the way, 8 years old, and I was 12 when we escaped. And my uncle, my father's brother, and his family, his wife and 2 children, they also went to Miami. Yeah, but the escaping part is another story. The whole revolution. I remember, first of all, I mentioned that my parents wanted to provide us with the best life and of course, also because I was a good student, I was able to get into music school easily. And so one day I was coming home from a piano lesson, and I was walking home, and I saw a lot of people, like hundreds, thousands of people on the street, and they were putting up posters about the revolution, and they were shouting, and it was a tumult. I went, when I got home, I told my mother that there's a revolution. And she said, "What?" Nobody knew about it except a handful of people who were the revolutionaries. And she turned the radio on, and voila, yes, there was a revolution. That's how we learned about the revolution. And Nebuch, I mean, it became like a few thousand people, thousands of people were killed during this fighting. And I mentioned before that my uncle happened to be in Moscow at the time, and a few weeks later, he still wasn't home, but the apartment building where his family was living was shot at. So it was cold already. The revolution started on October 23, 1956, and that, it was getting cold over there. It was getting into November, etc., and there were the windows were shattered in the apartment building where my aunt and cousins were living. So they came and stayed with us. And the children were, one was like a year and a half, and the other one was maybe three and a half years old. Anyway, they got sick, and we called the doctor, and the doctor told us that he can't come because his son was just killed.
Oy.
Yeah. And I remember tanks rolling in front of our house, apartment building, and my mother told my sister and I to lie on the floor until they pass. Things like that, to have color in one's life. Yeah.
And Judy, after when you came to America, did your parents associate with a lot of Hungarian Jews, or the circle of friends?
Yeah. It really was our circle of friends. Somehow, we used to go to a beach on Sundays, and somehow we always met relatives. One, actually, talking about relatives, some were really real relatives, and others were relatives because everybody was a relative who made it through the war. But we didn't speak English when we went to America, and it was like a family outing to go to a supermarket. And one of those times, both families, my uncle's family and my family, we were all at the supermarket trying to decipher, my parents anyway, and my uncle and aunt, they were trying to decipher, what was in this can or what was in that package, or, and of course they were speaking Hungarian, and this lady came up to them and said, "I hear you're speaking Hungarian, may I help you?" And it turned out that this lady was my aunt's second cousin.
Wow, what a small world.
Very small world. And these things happened all the time. In fact, one time, I was already married, and I was an interior designer and was working with an architect, and he sent me across the street to the little dinette and asked me to buy him a Coca-Cola. And I thought, like, I'm this interior designer, how come, he wants me to be a gopher? But anyway, I went. I hear the proprietors of the little restaurant speaking Hungarian. I thought, wouldn't it be cute when I pay, I'll say something in Hungarian. And I did. And of course, like, first and foremost, and you were asking me about this, if we're associated with the non-Jews. So first, when you meet a Hungarian, you have to kind of find out if they're Jewish or not. So you ask, pointed questions. Anyway, I passed the test, and they told me that their name is Neumann, and his name is Oscar, and her name is Magda. Anyway, after work, when I spoke with my mother, I told her that I met these really nice people, and the next time she's around that area, she should go in and say hello. And somehow she related this conversation that I had with these people to my uncle. And he says, Ossi Neumann, the trumpet player? We were in Siberia together.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And right away, they met. We looked them up in the phone book, and right away my uncle went to meet them, of course. Neither of them knew that either of them is still alive. Yeah.
And they were in America.
They were in America, and they were in Miami.
The same town, the same city. Wow.
But, you showed me the picture of this Agnes Hershey. So, also, because Miami was kind of a meeting place for everybody who Nebuch had to go to cooler climates in America.
This is the picture. This is her father, Father Karl Lutz, and this was Agnes Hershey.
Yeah.
And it was his idea to do the safe glass houses.
Yeah.
From Switzerland, and then later it was Wannenberg.
This is our story also. So anyway, I wanted to say that because there were a lot of people who were coming to Miami during the winter, and a lot of people who used to come from South America from their winter to Miami. We used to meet a lot of friends and relatives. And at one time, my father happened to meet this friend. They hadn't seen each other either since they were in high school in Debrecen. They both went to the gymnasium, and they re-met. And his last name is Hirsch, and they have a daughter whose name is Agnes. Yeah. So, yeah. It's quite incredible how people meet
and reconnect.
Yeah. I don't know if you'd want to.
And Judy, can I ask, did your family, or did you ever go back to Hungary after independence or after communists fell?
My parents, for many, many years, I think probably 27 years, something, they didn't go back to Hungary. But my mother still had a couple of cousins there, and I think they went back maybe once or twice to visit the cousins, but the last time they went, my father wanted to get into a cab, and the cab driver says, "I don't take Jews." So I said, "Okay, we don't need this." I did not go back until about 9 years ago, when my cousin, who I mentioned, wrote a book based on my father's story, and it was translated into Hungarian. It was translated into many languages, including Hebrew, like I think, I don't know, 19 languages. It's quite a book. She's a wonderful writer. She's really a good writer. Anyway, the book was translated into Hungarian, and since my sister already was not in this world anymore, I thought, since I live so close to Hungary, I'll go. And I went for 3 days, actually, and that was about 9 years ago. No, sorry. I don't know. Whatever it was, 7 years ago, whatever it is. Anyway, for 3 days I went, and it was an incredible experience, actually, for the reason of, again, saying Hashem Gadol. She, being the writer, she was invited to different universities because she teaches also writing, and she was invited to a couple universities in Budapest and in Debrecen, and so we went. I went with her to wherever she went, and in Debrecen we went to see the gymnasium that my father was in, and see the surrounding area, because that was the Jewish area of Debrecen, and that was really interesting, and they don't use that building for a gymnasium anymore. It's some kind of a youth center or something, but they did have a plaque saying that such and such a time this was a Jewish high school, and I went around. I was staying actually in my grandmother's apartment, because when we left, of course, we left everything, but somehow I think that after my grandmother left, she was able to write her apartment's name onto a niece of hers, and they kept living there. So when I went, I stayed in the apartment, and it used to be a really very, very elegant apartment. It used to belong to royalty before the war, but then, of course, the communists took over, and the royalty was asked to leave, so to speak, and it was in one of these apartments that my grandmother and her daughter, the youngest daughter, were living. But they used to subdivide the apartments, like they used to be like this huge, elegant apartment, and they subdivided it. It's fairly close to the Jewish section, and it was very much in walking distance to the Dohány Templum and that area. And but on the last night that I was there, I thought I really should go. I wanted to see the apartment building that we used to live in, and I took a cab, and I couldn't believe that I remembered the streets. I remembered the buildings. It was unbelievable what the capacity of the brain is. And yeah, so I took a cab, and at some point I really wasn't exactly watching where we were, and the cab was turning the corner, and mamash, a fraction of a second, I noticed that the building that we were passing is where I went to school. I couldn't get over the fact what the brain can do. That really, I wasn't looking and seeking. It was just like a fraction of a second. I asked the driver to please stop, because I wanted to take a photograph of the building. And it was already at night. So we went to the apartment building. I definitely didn't go in, but the Hungarians always know how to keep everything beautiful and neat and clean, and the apartment building was in tip-top shape. And I did not want to go to see the little house that my father built, because I was told, first of all, I thought maybe it's not there anymore. I have no idea. And I was told that it was a big, elegant area with beautiful villas, and I did not want to see what happened with my beautiful meadow and mountains and the flowers that I remembered, and the bugs and the stones and I didn't want to see it. So, and 3 days was enough to...
Did you meet any of your family that remained in Hungary when you went back? Is there any of your family that still are there? Did you manage?
So that's why I'm saying that I stayed in the apartment that was occupied by my mother's first cousin.
And you got on well? You had a good relationship?
Yeah. She and her husband were still in the apartment.
And are you still in touch with the family?
They passed away already, and I know that they had a son. I was never able to connect with him for some reason. I tried a few times to call on the phone, but I was not able to get in touch with. So I don't know of any relatives definitely on any of my parents' side who are in Hungary. Definitely, I know that on my father's side there are at least 700 and something people in Israel that I don't know. I really don't know them. Just maybe a couple I've met, but I know that we do have a large family, because some of my father's family they came like in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and I remember some of them made Aliyah like in 1947, 48, 49, those area. I mean those times. Yeah.
But Judy, when you went back and you met the family in the home that you stayed in, it must have been a wonderful reunion.
It was. They couldn't believe that they would see me again. It was. Was this
their first reconnection with the family?
Right. Yeah.
And did they retain any of the Judaism?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, they didn't have a kosher home. But yes, I'm sure. I mean, they were like Masorati, like
traditional.
Traditional, yeah.
And Judy, I want to ask, because this is really quite a interesting. I mean, your parents, from that beautiful photograph, just that you have that photograph, that photograph survived from before the war.
I tell you what, I think that some photographs we have, because my mother sent photographs to her brothers
in America.
My mother many times mentioned that the only thing that she would have liked to have were photographs. But I tell you, the only thing that we took when we were escaping was a little box, and that's about it. And whatever clothes we had. When my mother told us, we were, by the way, the last people from our family to escape. Everybody else had already gone. My grandmother, my aunts, and their families, and my father and his brother and family. He heard one morning that they're conscripting men into the army, and right away he let my uncle know, his brother know, and they said, okay, we're leaving. We're not going to have anything to do with any more being in uniform. So it was kind of definitely by word of mouth, but finding out that someone is a guide who knows how to escape, how to help people escape from Hungary.
Well, where did you go when you left Hungary?
To Austria, because that was the only free country. All the other countries surrounding Hungary were communist countries. So that was the only way out.
And you were lucky you could leave, that you could escape.
Well, I tell you, leave.
You could escape Hungary into Austria.
So that's why I want to tell you that people left Pitom. The first person who to leave from our family was my aunt. She wasn't married, and she was a cool cat aunt, and she was able to escape. And then little by little, my other aunt, people just found out that somebody could take them out, and they left from one minute to another. That was that, and Baruch Hashem, all of us made it, because there were a lot of people who were caught. It was dangerous. It was life-threatening to leave, and so finally, it was just my grandmother, my mother, my sister, and I who were left in the family. And one day, we had a knock on the door by these two people, two men, and they said that they were sent through word of mouth, because everybody else was already in Vienna, that they were sent to take us out, to help us escape. Of course, first you have to kind of find out if they're legit. They passed the test, and they looked at these two little kids and an older person, and they said, we can't all go together because it would be too dangerous. So of course, the reason we were still there was because of my grandmother, and my mother said, okay, so that then my grandmother will go first. And so they took my grandmother. Of course, we never knew, if we'll ever see each other again. It was all like super out of a person's logical self. It wasn't like decisions that you could make. It was like, I don't know how to describe that kind of situation where you have to make this decision, and it's okay if you're gonna get killed the next second. Like that's what it was. So Baruch Hashem, they succeeded in taking my grandmother, and a few days later they came back for us, and it was like December 23rd that they came back, and they said, okay, you're ready, you're coming, and my mother told my sister and I, that we're going. So my sister and I started to pack our toys. I tell you what, our toy closet was like that small. And my mother said, no, you can't take anything with you. We're just escaping. We can't take anything. No duffel bags, nothing. So my sister started to cry. She was very attached to her doll. So she said, how can a mother leave her baby? So my mother said, okay, so you could take your doll. And then I thought, well, she's taking her doll. I want to take something too. And my most precious possession was a set of color pencils. So we also took that. And my mother, being a dressmaker, she took some thread and needle and a thimble and probably a pair of scissors and 2 other items. One was a comforter that somehow she still had from before the war. She had no idea how that was, but it was, she was able to roll it into a small space, and also an etching that my father gave her. And that was our little box. And actually, my sister carried that doll. She carried that doll through our escaping. I remember she was holding the doll. So anyway, when the men came back, it was, they said, okay, so December 24th, we're leaving. And it was agreed that we're going to meet the 2 men. They were working on the railroad, and they lived very close to the border, so they knew the ins and outs. And so the agreement was that we were supposed to meet them at the main train station going west. And of course, because it was dangerous to leave, and we didn't have money, because it cost a lot, my mother all of a sudden remembered that we had a neighbor who wanted to buy our piano for years. And she made up this alibi that we had a big plumbing problem in the house in the country, that the pipes broke, and we needed money right away, and she has to sell the piano. So that's how we had money in order to pay for this escape. And this woman was so happy to buy the piano, thank God. And so my mother left the apartment. It was a beautiful apartment, really, with things like this and this and many other things like this. And she just closed the door on the apartment. So all that my parents were able to provide physically was in that apartment that they slaved over day and night. But she just locked the door, and she told the neighbors, so they wouldn't suspect anything, that she had to go up to the house in the mountain because of this plumbing problem. Because we left, she left like it was dark still, to pick us up, because my sister and I spent a night at a cousin's house, so it wouldn't look suspicious that we were leaving. And by the time my mother picked us up, it wasn't dark anymore. Anyway, yeah. By the way, at this cousin who we were staying with, he used to be the head of the Hungarian radio, and he was one of the first ones who was captured when the revolution started, because because he was such a high official in the communist regime. Anyway, they were not. Outside they were something, and inside they were something else. Anyway, so we were staying at the cousin's house, and I remember just watching the fireplace the whole night, thinking, like, this is something major that's happening. And my mother picked us up, and we, Baruch Hashem, met the two men, and the instructions were that we were supposed to board the car that was closest to the engine, and it was December 24th. So my mother told my sister and I that whoever asks where we're going, we should tell them that we're going to relatives for the holiday. We thought that if we would have to say that, our teeth are going to fall out or something, because it was so foreign to us. Like, the Gaisha holiday was just like not a part of our life. And we were also told, my mother also told us that that if somebody asks, like makes a comment about the doll that my sister was holding, that we should tell them that, because in Hungary, as I said, the Christian holidays were really like frum. They were really religious, and in Hungary, little JC brings the presents. Santa Claus Day was a separate day, December 26th. Like, all the children had Santa Claus Day. That was something different. But for this Gaisha holiday, the little baby JC brings the presents, and of course we had to pronounce the name. And again, we thought, if we really have to say this, I don't know if we'll be able to say it, but Baruch Hashem, nobody asked. But whatever, we boarded the train, and again the instructions were that when the train will pull out from the main station, it will be a little ways. It will stop for a couple of seconds in order for my mother to run from the car to the engine, because she was supposed to be hiding there the whole trip. And my sister and I were staying in the car by ourselves. We didn't know if we'll ever see my mother again, and but Baruch Hashem, we did, and the trip, we were dressed very differently, like kind of elegant, from people who would be visiting their relatives. But Baruch Hashem, nobody said anything, and yes, intermittently the train did stop looking for people who were trying to escape. But Baruch Hashem, they didn't bother two little girls, which was the premise. And sometimes our guides were checking on us, and I'm sure that people who were around us knew what we were doing, and Baruch Hashem didn't say anything.
Sure.
Yeah. And by the time we got to the last station, we were again told that we should wait until the train pulls out, and then get off and go behind a certain building, which is where my mother was supposed to wait for us. And Baruch Hashem, we found our mother, and this was the holy night already, and so our guides asked permission if we would let them celebrate with the family, and we would sleep at one of their houses. The house was a basement apartment, I just remember that they had a couple beds, and there was a kitchen that was smaller than this table. And my mother opened one of the drawers, and she saw a couple of spoons, a couple of knives, and a few forks. They were just poor, poor, poor. And actually, because it was the holiday, so the upstairs, the homeowners, they were really very nice. They invited us for the holiday meal. And I remember just not wanting to eat this non-kosher, not that we were kosher, but my mother never bought anything that was not kosher either. But I just remember the smell of the chicken soup was nothing like my mother's chicken soup. I just really, maybe I ate a baked potato, or I don't know, or an apple, or I don't know, something, but really I didn't want to eat anything. But they were so nice. They really were so nice. And when it got dark, our guides came back and told us that it's time to leave. Mind you, it was December 25th, so it was like snow, a lot of snow. In a nutshell, we walked for about 3.5 hours, and fields and valleys, and we were for a while we were walking in the ditch of the railroad tracks, and there were searchlights. Every time the searchlight came on, we had to duck. And so I don't remember really being scared, except the time when one of the guides pointed out that in the distance there were some lights, and he said that that's already Austria. The only problem for me was that there was still a frozen lake that we had to go across, and that's the only time that I remember that I was afraid that what if the ice is not thick enough to support our weight. So we walked, Baruch Hashem, it was cold enough that the ice was thick enough, but we walked like ducks, like our feet not being together, so we wouldn't put pressure on, like one space. And Baruch Hashem, we made it, and we did head toward those lights that happened to be like a restaurant or an inn, or I don't know, something. And we walked in. I still remember the scene. And of course, people who were there, they knew what was happening, because we were not the first people who arrived in such a state. And they peeled our frozen clothes off, and
And this was Austria.
This was Austria already, yeah. And they gave us some drinks, warm drinks, and sandwiches and things like that. And it's so funny. The thing that I remember also, that there was a jukebox there with little 45
records.
Yeah, and I was fascinated by it, and then when we were already thawed out, they escorted us to this building that was a Red Cross station that the Austrians set up to welcome the refugees, because there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people who escaped. So what was crazy is that during the revolution, I didn't say this, during the revolution, Hungary won, and became a free country for about 7 days. At that time, people said, wow, we can leave. And people just, at that time, they could leave by cars, by trucks, by train, by airplane, I don't know what. But then the Russians came in and took over Hungary again. That was the fighting. That was like real fighting, and they took over Hungary again. And then the borders closed. But people still had this idea of freedom, and that's when people started to escape. So, yeah, that was the situation, and yes, there were a lot of people who were caught, a lot of people who were killed, a lot of people were put into jail, whatever, on their way out, because the border is not straight. The border is like winding, and if you didn't know where you were going, you could be going out of Hungary into Austria and go back to Hungary.
So you went where there was a lake, so there wasn't a border.
Whatever, these people already knew the road.
And you didn't know where your father was at this time?
No, we didn't. So actually we slept at this place, and we got, because we were the last ones to leave, to arrive, we were given the mattresses that were closest to the source of heat. And everybody was still in a holiday mood, because not only Jews came out, they were everybody, and not such great people also came out, because during the revolution, jails were emptied, and people who needed to be in jail also escaped.
Criminals.
Yeah. So it was still not Gan Eden at all. We were still in danger, but we were already in Austria, and my mother had some kind of a message that one of her sisters was someplace, and we went there, but she wasn't there anymore. And I have to tell you that the Austrian people were wonderful. They saw what was going on. We didn't have any money with us, definitely not shillings, and they immediately, took things out of their purse or their bag and gave us an orange and chocolate and I don't know, whatever. They were so nice, and definitely they let us go on the train or bus or whatever we needed to go on in order to try to find our relatives. We knew that they were in Vienna, and of course through word of mouth we found them. And the joke was, there were so many people, like we knew in Vienna, but the joke was that if you just had a little bit of brain, you stayed in Hungary. And then you had to say, what? It says, yeah, if you had a little more, you're here. So, Baruch Hashem, we found our family, but we also found out that my father and brother, in the meantime, had a little episode in jail, because somebody accused them of being communists. So they put them in jail, and until it was proven that they were not communists.
Were they already in Austria as well?
Yeah, they were in Vienna.
Your father was in Vienna.
But definitely the Viennese didn't want to have riffraff and communists and like negative people. And until they were able to prove by having enough friends to be witnessing for them that they were not communists.
They vouched for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you remember the reunion when you saw your father again?
You know what? I don't even remember. It was crazy times. It was like non-existing existence. But I do remember we were put up in a hotel, and I have to tell you that still, whenever I'm starting to peel an orange, I remember the fragrance of that hotel, because in Hungary we didn't have oranges, but we went to a free country, and over there they had luxury. They had oranges, and everybody was buying oranges. So the whole hotel smelled of oranges, and actually the highest, or the Jayas, whichever, I don't remember, and the American government were the ones who were helping us be in a hotel, and they gave us money and little kits wherever we went, hygiene kits, soap, I don't know,
How
whatever.
did you get to America? Did you go by ship or?
Yeah. So I'm getting to it. So we used to go to this soup kitchen, and that was run by the American government. And I remember them asking, tea, coffee, whatever. And because we were children, I remember they gave us some little Hershey chocolates, and they gave us some money. Somebody gave us some money, and I remember going to this little grocery store that was full of like things that we couldn't even dream of. They had figs, dried figs, and dates, and coffee, and like this kind of stuff. It was like out of the world. Also, because on the road, one of my sister's doll's shoe was lost, and we noticed that there was a big toy store across the street from where we were staying, and we didn't speak German, but my aunt did, and she taught us the most simple language, to ask for a pair of shoes for the doll, and I know that it sounds stupid, but I still remember we were supposed to say "Bitte schön, Puppe kleine Schuh," or "Kleine Puppe Schuh," I don't know, whatever, and of course we didn't buy it. They gave a pair of red lacquer shoes for the doll, which we still have. We still have it's at my niece's house, and so these were some of the memories that I have of Vienna, and because of the two brothers who were in America, the American government wrote them and asked if they would sponsor us, and they said yes. They were a little hesitant, but they said yes, and because of that, we only stayed in Vienna for 2 weeks. And in the meantime, an interesting incident happened. Richard Nixon was the vice president at that time, and he came to say hello to the refugees, to the escapees, and somehow I have no idea how my father got. Maybe we were at the consulate, or I really don't know where it was. Anyway, my father, we already knew that we're going to go to America. So Nixon asked my father, "Are you happy that you're going to America?" And he said he's very, very happy that he's going to America, but he's sad that his brother and family were not included in the package because they were not immediate family. They were, like one removed. And could the vice president please, of course this was through an interpreter, help my uncle and family? And he said, okay, I'll see what I could do. And he did. He arranged. In fact, they were on the ship before we were. Yeah. So these kinds of things. So yes, we went by train from Vienna to Münchenerhof, a seaport in Germany. And I remember needing to stay overnight in Salzburg, where the Goyim started to attack the Jews. They went into the kitchen and got knives, and they were going to kill the Jews. But Baruch Hashem, I don't know, they got intercepted. But that's one of the things that I remember on the way. That's why I'm saying that, like, it wasn't Gan Eden yet. We were not in America yet. But yeah.
It's amazing. This was in Salzburg.
It was in Salzburg. We were on our way to the American Navy boat that we got a ride on to America. But somehow my sister and I thought we were really excited about going to America, and we went. There was a little Macaulay somehow where we were staying in some kind of barracks. I don't know. Maybe it was even American, military something. And there was a little grocery store there, and we thought we have to buy something for the trip. So we bought a bazooka gun and a package of lifesavers. I don't know if you know.
I do,
yeah.
with a little hole in the middle.
Yeah, right. And we thought, okay, so we will save this for the boat. Little did we think about what was going to happen, because yes, Baruch Hashem, we were on the boat, and it was a Navy ship, so we were not really in luxurious rooms or anything. They had, like canvas beds, one on top of the other, for most everyone. The older people, I think that they were able to stay in like beds. Anyway, one day, I think it was a conflicting. I thought that it took us 11 days to cross the ocean, but somebody in the family said it was 16, but I don't know why I remember 11 days. But anyway, one of those days, my sister and I said, okay, so let's take out the bazooka gun. And we were not used to anything as sweet as that. And actually we got seasick from it. And we said, I think that was the last time that we had bazooka gum. And the lifesaver we were saving, for months we were saving the lifesavers until we found out when we were already in Miami that it wasn't so expensive. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we took one and we broke it in half, and she had half and I had half. Anyway, refugee children, right? So we arrived it was already February that we arrived in America on the boat early in the morning. It was still dark, and of course everybody crowded onto the deck to see the Statue of Liberty. It was too dark to see, but I also remember this scene of us going into the New York harbor, and in the distance I saw a lot of lights, like as if it were a long train, but the lights kept going, and I thought, it can't, how long is this train? Until I realized it got a little lighter, that there were cars on the FDR. I had no idea that there were cars, that many cars existing. But anyway, we got off the boat, and America, and the Red Cross ladies were there with their hot drinks and the pastries, and we were transported to a place in New Jersey called Camp Kilmer. That was it was also some kind of a military place, and wherever we went, people were really so nice and gracious, and we were given clothes, and I remember the men in our barracks, they put on these pajamas, and they wanted to be American, so they put the pajamas on, and they kept saying okay, like we didn't speak really a word of English, but they found out that in America there's a saying okay, and so they were parading. I wanted to say one other thing, a memory from the boat ride. My cool cat aunt, for some reason, she had a nickel, and she gave the nickel to my sister and I. She said, "There's an American drink, and you should try it." And she gave us this nickel to put into the machine. And to our luck, we put the nickel in. It was one of those machines where the syrup comes out one pipe and the soda on the other, into a cup that falls down. And so, I guess during the cycle, the syrup stopped, and here comes this drink that didn't taste like anything, and my sister and I looked at each other and said, of course not in English, but we said, if people in America like this, we don't think we're gonna like America. So these memories, my father was the first one on the boat to get seasick. We were still crossing the English Channel, there was no wave, but he decided that he's going to get seasick because he's on a boat. So Camp Kilmer was a place where they were sending people to different places in the States. And we were there for a few days until the arrangements were made that we were going to be going to Miami, and part of the family went to Los Angeles, as I mentioned before. And it was February, but we also, I just remember that we were given clothes and a pair of shoes and things like that. And even though there was snow on the sidewalk, we wanted to put our new shoes on. And we arrived we went to LaGuardia Airport, and before going to the airport, we were directed toward this hotel, and it said hotel, motel. We thought, they're just joking, hotel, motel. We knew the word hotel, we didn't know the word motel. Years later, or whenever, we found out that motel was motor hotel, but we didn't know that. Anyway, they just a scene at that hotel motel. My mother saw that the bathroom had pink tile. She said to everyone in the hotel room, she says, even if you don't have to go to the bathroom, just go to see the pink tile. And her tears were rolling down her face. And so we arrived in Miami. We were picked up by my uncle, and even though they were really, really nice, and they signed a paper that they're going to back us up, after he picked us up at the airport and on our way to the hotel, he drove by the city hall, and he pointed out to us that on the top of the city hall is a jail, and they'll put us there if we're not going to behave. And I think that he kind of ate his words when he was at my sister's graduation from medical school. I think he finally apologized that they didn't think that refugees are going to amount to anything.
Were you close with your uncle?
Yes.
And your parents were close as well?
Yes, yeah. But it was just, yeah. He and his family, they were really very close. And they were always joking that the refugees have a more beautiful apartment than their house, and the refugee kids are going to the best school just because they happen to, buy a house. Again, my parents, a year after that we were in America, from nothing, they said, we have to buy a house. And they borrowed money from here, there, for a down payment. And it was actually, the house was close to a very wealthy area of Miami. And we happened to go to those schools. And my uncle was always saying, oh, let's go to the refugees because their light fixture is nicer than ours. And I don't know, it was, meanwhile, Baruch Hashem, they were millionaires. Wow. My uncle used to be a metalsmith, but he used to design kitchens for hotels and restaurants, and that's when all these new hotels were going up. And he used to take my parents to the opening of like Eden Rock or Fontainebleau and I don't know whatever, because he used to make the kitchens. So they were not simple people. My uncle in Los Angeles, he was also like a multimillionaire, and I don't know how much more time you have, but that uncle who was in Los Angeles, he had a fantastic story. He was a teenager and a really good-looking kid, and he was a champion swimmer and a champion skier. And how did he get out of Hungary before the war? He and his friends were at the swimming pool, and his friends told his visitors from England that my uncle was the gold medal winner for swimming that year, and they looked alike. And by the time these visitors from England found out that wasn't true, he really loved my uncle, this gorgeous teenager kid, and he wanted to adopt him. He knew the story that he was from a family of 5 children, really poor, with a widow as a mother. He wanted to adopt him, but they were too close in age for legal adoption. But he took him out from Hungary anyway. And that was his story of getting out of Hungary. And
was it a Jewish person that did this?
I don't even know. I really don't know if it was a Jewish person. I don't think I ever asked. I don't know if it ever came up. But because of this person, my uncle became a textile expert, and I guess this man was associated, or he owned, textile businesses, manufacturing, and that's what my uncle became.
And you kept the connection. Your family kept the connection with your uncle in Los Angeles.
He's not alive anymore. Yes, definitely. Yeah. None of them are alive anymore. And I don't know. I definitely don't know.
And Judy, can I just ask, did your family instill with you, your sister and you, Jewish customs, and did your family keep Shabbat, or when you were in America? Or go to synagogue?
We did not keep Shabbat. I tell you, I just want to inject. I know you just asked me, but I just want to tell you that my other uncle, the way that he came out from Hungary, he was on a train ride and met this girl who was visiting her uncle and aunt in Hungary from America, and they fell in love, and that's how he got out. Everybody has a story, right? So I tell you what, we were not Shomer Shabbos, even in America. In fact, my mother was still traumatized, and one of their English teachers was a Baptist minister who invited the whole class, to go to his church. And my mother had this idea that maybe it would be better for our lives to take this on, but of course it was out of the question. But still, my mother still had this fear of what she's experienced. The gash was still there. I mean, it was only 12 years after the war, 13 years, whatever, and so it was still very much. But yes, we did go to shul, and to for the holidays, and eventually my parents healed. And my father was president of their synagogue for years, and he was working for B'nai B'rith day and night, and so I guess the years softened, but I have to say that me growing up in such a situation, I wasn't loving to be. I wasn't loving Yiddishkeit. When I was in college, it was on Yom Kippur. I was at services, which was held in the auditorium of the medical school. I said, I don't know. I don't want this. It's not a part of my life. I'm only doing this because of my father. And I walked out. And I really didn't want to do so much with Yiddishkeit, because to me, Yiddishkeit wasn't anything that was sweet. It was full of memories of everybody who was murdered, and full of memories of stories of slave labor camp, and of all this, anything that we did associated with Yiddishkeit was full of trauma and terribleness. So I thought, if Yiddishkeit is like this, I don't think I want it. And I didn't see anything in America that was, like, or the shuls that we went to, or that davening on Yom Kippur. It didn't give me anything to want to hold on to. And it wasn't until, but Hashem is very tricky, and guided me. I became a really pretty good interior designer, and I got married, and
But you got married in a shul, and
yeah, I did. And yeah, so but my husband was also, at the time, he really wasn't into religion either. He was a brilliant man. He's not alive anymore. But he was a brilliant man. He was a cancer researcher, and his whole life was, like science. And when I did start, looking into things, like, Hashem is really kind of tricky. When I was 30 years old, things really kind of flipped. We were living in New York. My husband was working at New York Hospital as a cancer researcher, and I already had my daughter, who now with her family lives in Hebron. I'm not going to make the long story short, or vice versa. We met some friends who were going to go to Israeli folk dance weekend, and my friend was expecting, and she was told by her doctor that she should really not go and jump around, and she asked me if I would go instead of her, and I said yeah, and I fell into this fantastic world of Israeli folk dance. I didn't know that such a thing existed. I mean, we used to dance Hungarian, Romanian, Russian dance at smachot, right? And of course, the hora, and I don't know. But I didn't know that such a thing existed. And I loved it so much that I started teaching like 3 weeks later, because I couldn't contain myself. I would go to a workshop one night and then teach the next night, and so I got involved with Jews because I started teaching at the Y and in Sunday school and at this and at that, and I didn't realize until about 4 years later that the song that really turned me on was Shlomo Carlebach's, one of his songs, when I met him 4 years later. And but anyway, my life completely changed, and my husband at the time just couldn't take my complete change, because I thought, my gosh, I'm finally myself. I didn't really know that this existed, that me existed like this. So when I met Shlomo, we were living in New York, and he was also living in New York with his family, Actually, I met Zalman Schachter first. I don't know if you know Zalman. And I met Zalman for Rosh Hashanah and Shlomo during Sukkot. And they were always fighting over, who's going to take credit for me. But anyway, both of them, Baruch Hashem, came into my life, and I got divorced because it was just like two opposites.
Your husband couldn't reconcile.
He couldn't handle all that Yiddishkeit that I was like, I couldn't get enough of the kind of. I thought if Yiddishkeit is like this, then I'll take it. I didn't know that this existed, and it wasn't just full of blood and tears and terrible memories.
And you couldn't explain this to your husband?
No, that was, yeah. So anyway, that's what happened, and Baruch Hashem, Hashem directed me to want to learn more, and again I'm going to skip a whole bunch, but I did end up in 1979 in Yerushalayim, because I wanted to learn more about Yiddishkeit, and I wanted to stay, but again Hashem had different avenues for me to meet my husband, who I got married to in 1982, actually from Zalman's house in Philadelphia, and I was really very, very close to Shlomo. And actually in 1981, 81, I was, because I skipped a whole bunch, I was living in the apartment above the shul on 79th Street at Shlomo's parents' house, which used to be his parents' house. And because my former husband wanted to take custody of my daughter, and I had to come back to America to defend it, etc., because we were living in Yerushalayim, and I had to go to the States, like right away, and Baruch Hashem, the courts ruled that yes, Leah could go, and be with me, and actually she started going to Manhattan Day School, which was Rabbi Shlomo Riskin's school, and we used to, so to speak, cry on each other's shoulders that we were still in New York and not in Eretz Israel, which is when he was planning, that year he was planning Efrat. And so anyway, Leah and I were living upstairs in the shul that year, and within a very short time, like probably hours, I realized that there was something to do there, because Shlomo's mother passed away the summer before, and while she was there, things were taken care of. But everything was not taken care of. Shlomo used to come and be there to do, learnings, and sometimes for Shabbos, etc., when he would invite everybody, like 150 people, I don't know what. And so I took care of whatever needed to be taken care of. And by the end of the year, Shlomo and his twin brother, Eli Chaim, decided that they're going to take turns in being at the shul like every other week. And I saw that then we couldn't really live there anymore. And that year, Shlomo wasn't in the shul in New York, And I thought, okay, so I'll go to Zalman. And on my way down to Zalman in Philadelphia, my purse was stolen. The only things that were remaining out of my purse, which I was calling Zalman to tell him I'm coming, and you know what time I'll be arriving. And so my glasses, my sitter, and my address book were the only things that were left out of my purse. And I thought, okay, so this means that my ability to see, the most important things, the three things, my ability to see, and my connection with Hashem, and my connection with my friends. So that's what I had, and Baruch Hashem, they believed me at Grand Central Station that I already bought the ticket, which was true, and I went to Philadelphia. Are we running out of time? Okay.
And then when did you come to Israel? Was it...
I stayed in Philadelphia that year, and I started running Zalman's Geschäft over there, and I met my husband to be over there, and we got married in Tammuz, and he was from Montreal, so we went to live in Montreal. He had 4 children from a former marriage, and but our Tanai was that we're going to come to Eretz Yisrael to live. So Bekitzer, we lived in Montreal for 12 years. When his 4 children turned over the age of 18, and we were able to come to Eretz Yisrael because my husband was doing a program, master's program actually from YU, and he was in another program at Bar Ilan, and that enabled us to come in 1994. And in 1996, as a family, we made official Aliyah.
Wow, so I just want to thank you so much. You know, Judy, it's been unbelievable. Your story, I am...
So that's what happened.
Judy, so I want to thank you so much, really, for your story and the miracles and how Hashem has guided and where you are today, and you have a yeshiva in your home.
Yeah.
And to think from this picture that survived, I mean, this is we're touching history.
Yes, it is.
So it is unbelievable. I'm so grateful to you. You should just only have nachas and maybe stream in good health and.
Amen. The Kulan.
Sure, you are inspiration, absolute inspiration, and your devotion and you can see Yiddishkeit is alive, and you feel it and you live it.
Baruch Hashem, we have the best teachers. My husband, I mentioned that he was from a family of Holocaust survivors. His father lost his family and remarried after the war, and the woman he married was my husband's mother, and they were in Montreal. They went to Montreal. They also have their stories, and so my husband grew up in Lubavitch educated school, education, and so
it had influence.
So we were an open house.
It's wonderful, and you can see this your home here. It's full of sforim and books and chairs, and you have so many guests.
Yeah.
Oh, so you must just be in good health and continue doing what you're doing and being an inspiration to all of us and to Am Yisrael.
Amen. Thank you. Yes,
thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough. Really, it's an incredible miracle that you've had and should continue to have.
Yeah, it is a miracle. It really is. I'm constantly